Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I'm the streamer for this stream, and I work on a Django application. I teach what I can about what I know about Django, and I've been doing Django for a bunch of years, so I know a thing or two by now. Tonight we're going to work on some modeling changes. So I have a pretty robust model for my application at this point. And we're going to change some of the internal structure based on some feedback that I've got from my customer, who happens to be my wife in this context. So feel free to ask about Python, Django, or web development. I do have a chat open, and just ask that people be civil, and if you can't be, I'll ask you to leave. But there are a number of ways. Before we get started, I'll let you know about a number of ways that you can get in touch with me. I have a website at mattlehman.com. There's a link above, and a Twitter handle is mblehman. That's also my handle for Patreon and all sorts of other services. If you want to follow me, or like and subscribe and all that stuff, you're able to do that on Twitch. And when I post these videos up on YouTube later, I would appreciate if you follow me there as well to keep up to date with what's going on. I do have a Patreon account, as I mentioned, and if you like what you see and you want to throw a few dollars my way, I would be really grateful. So I am thankful for the patrons that I do have, of Mark and Patrick and Rob. I appreciate everything you do, and your ways of contributing back and showing some appreciation. That's really awesome. So let's get started on what we're going to do. Last time on the stream, we worked on this milestone, which was a set of feedback that I got from my wife about the application, about changes that she would like to see to the model, just to the app in general. And some of them were cosmetic, some of them had some logic changes, but there was one or two that have implications to the actual model structure of the application. And as a reminder, if you've never joined me before, I'm working on a homeschool application. So it's for helping my wife and eventually other people in the future manage their homeschool schedules. So that's what the app is all about, and it is built on Django and Python, as I've mentioned. So there is a models file that I've got here, which is an image that I've been able to generate from a tool that comes from a package called Django Extensions. And what it does is it dumps out all of the models that you have. Don't worry too much about this line. That's something we're using for onboarding in previous streams. I drew on top of this thing, so that would not normally be there on the output. But I wanted to bring this up because I want to show the change that we need to make today, or the change that I want to make, I should say. The big change is this relationship right here between the grade level model and the course. So the way my application works is it sort of functions like a tree of a user has one school associated with it, and then each school has a set of school years, and then each school year has a set of grades, and then there are courses and then tasks, and all of this kind of fans together to make everything that a student has to do during the course of the year, and is all the tracking work. So the modeling right now is each of those things is a one-to-many relationship. So a school can have many school years, a school year can have many grades, a grade can have many courses, a course can have many tasks, and so on. So it's a pure tree in that sense. The change that we're about to make, though, is going to modify that behavior so that it's not a pure tree. Right now, you can see that may not be able to see it because it's kind of small, but if we look at the course model, you can see that there's a foreign key that points back to a grade level. And the change that we need to make is to make it so that a course can actually be associated with multiple grade levels, a many-to-many relationship. And the reason for that is my wife would like to have the ability to create a single course that is shared between multiple students, frankly, my two children. And my children are not the same age, so they're across grade levels, but maybe there's a type of class that doesn't really make sense for the two of them to have separate versions of it, like art or music. I don't really know, just kind of making up examples. But hopefully that gives you an idea of a scenario where you could want to have a course that two students of different grade levels could both take. And that would help her her being my wife, eliminate the need to create tasks for both my son and my daughter as they go through their work. So we need to change this relationship from being a direct foreign key to a many-to-many relationship. So right now it's a foreign key field, and it needs to go to some kind of many-to-many field. And I believe that's the actual name of that. So that's what we're going to try and do today. And honestly, I don't work with many-to-many fields a lot, so there are probably things that I've forgotten. I know roughly how to use them, but it's always the details, right, that get you. Thankfully, though, I have pretty good coverage on this application. So, in fact, if I run this makefile target, it runs the entire test suite with a coverage check. And what comes out the other side is, we've got 99% statement coverage on this application. So that means that, in theory, we should be able to modify the field type and run the tests, and if anything's just going to break outright, it should get a bunch of failures as the hope. With the exception of these one or two spots that do not have coverage, which I might just come back when I'm not streaming and fill them in, because mostly they're just spots that you wouldn't think would matter, like stir methods or something that I didn't write tests for, and I didn't feel the need to cover them at the time. But just if I was able to achieve that 100% number, then I could know very quickly if every line of the system was touched or not. So being at 99% is actually kind of annoying in that way. So that's the scenario, and we need to figure out how we're going to make the change. And so let's start by getting up Vim and looking at the place where this model is defined, and decide where to put the new version of it. So the model itself is in the schools application, I think. Yeah, okay, so here's one interesting thing right out of the gate, is we're going to be crossing an app boundary on top of all this. So the place that this is currently defined is in a different app called Courses, which is just for the course and the tasks that are related to courses. And you can see right here where the foreign key exists. And so we need to change from a foreign key to a many-to-many relationship. And to do that, I'm going to bring up the documentation because, as I said, I don't work with many-to-many often enough to really know what to expect right off the bat. And let's talk about many-to-many for a minute, because, well, first of all, I guess when in the chat I put the wrong, I used the number 2. It's actually the word 2. But there is, what is a many-to-many field? And what is a foreign key field? Like, how does that work at the database? I think that that's useful to know, so you have some basic understanding of what Django is actually doing. And they are pretty different structurally. So when you have a foreign key, what you're really doing is you're going into the database table and you're putting in an identifier pointing to a different table. So on this course model, if we were to inspect the database and look at what's in there, and in fact, maybe we can do that. So if we do manage and we do db shell, what shell is this going to dump me into though? It dumps me into SQLite. So I don't know off the top of my head how to get all the fields out of a SQLite database shell. Select star from courses course. Well, that gets out the records. Or how about describe? Is that the right? So courses course is the database table that is associated with the course model. And now I'm not getting the syntax right, but we can use this as a reference point, and I can explain it from here. So one of these fields, this first one in this column of output, this is all just data that's in my local database. It's temporary, and it's not displayed very well, but you can get an idea from it. So the first column is the primary key, the ID primary key. And if we come back to the actual file itself, you can see that there's a field for name, there's a field for grade level, and there's a UUID field. And we'll be able to see each of those. They're separated by spaces. And since there's only 4 attributes that are in the table, we can quickly figure out which one is which. Although I guess I'm now seeing more than that. Oh, I know what this other one is. This field right here, the second field, is actually inherited from the from an abstract class from the days of week model. So let's ignore that little bit. That's just a number. It's helping to, in a using bitwise operations, map which days go with the course. Don't worry about that part for now. The next attribute that we can see is the name. So it's here, and it corresponds to the name. And then there's a UUID, which is that big hexadecimal identifier right here. And then finally is the actual foreign key. And the foreign key that's here is pointing to the grade level that this course is connected with. So in this database, I have, we might be able to figure it out. It's like my wife's data initially has my kids are in 2nd grade and in kindergarten. And so the names are matching up. So here's all the 2nd grade stuff for one of my children. And you can see that that's got a foreign key of 31. So that must be pointing to the 2nd grade object. And then if we go down to the kindergarten courses that are here, which are marked with K, we can see it's pointing to 32. So the way foreign keys work is they keep that integer, that primary key relationship, it doesn't have to be an integer, I guess, and are able to point back to a different table. So whenever we need to reference what is the connection between this database table and some other database table, that's where it's actually stored at the model. And you can see, hopefully, how this creates a one-to-many kind of relationship, because a course can only have a single number associated with it. It's not like the database can easily have 31, 32. It's not how it works internally. So foreign keys in the models is always a one-to-many. That's and sometimes you might see it as 1 to M or 1 to N is other ways that you might encounter this. And even in the modeling picture, that diagram, this dot is a UML syntax that means one to many. I never remember that syntax, frankly, but I'm pretty sure that's what the dot means in this context. So the difference is a many-to-many relationship is M to N. So that's like multiple grade. As I said, multiple grade levels could point to the same course, so that it's not just a foreign key. So the question then becomes like, well, where does that get stored? How is that even possible if the record here can only store one? It's not like you can go to the other one and say store multiple courses there. So there's this disconnect of how do you get multiple to show up in both the tables? And the answer that is in relational databases and has been around for a long time is to use a third table. And sometimes it's called Django likes to call it the through model or the through table, but it's a table that is nothing more than pairs of IDs. So if you have a grade level, and we'll stick with the numbers here, if grade level 31 as the identifier, and you wanted to have grade level 32 point at the same course of reading 309, you would have two rows in this middle table that would be 31 and 309 and 32 and 309. But you can also see how that could work in the opposite direction, where you could have multiple courses point to the same grade level. So 309 and 310 can both point to 31 in this many-to-many relationship. And so that's how the database models this stuff so that it can manage this. So the implication of that if we think about it, is that when we do queries, there is a performance penalty that happens from this, because you now have to go to a third table in order to do this comparison and properly join on this stuff. Databases are really well designed for this problem space, so they do it pretty well. But that's just the implication that you should be aware of. So that's the context. And we need to now think about where to put the many-to-many field. And I think, if I recall correctly, it almost doesn't matter whether you put it on one model or the other. It's kind of a preference, because, and it might just affect what's most accessible for the naming. And so I need to think about what's going to be a more common operation. Am I, in my modeling system of my system, am I going to have a grade level and I'm going to want to say, get me the courses? Or am I going to have a course and want to say, get me the grade levels? Both could be true. And in fact, using some stuff that comes with the many-to-many field, we can probably have our cake and eat it too by getting both directions. But it just is a consideration of where do we actually want to put this. So let's see. I don't know that I really care in this context. So this may be a kind of a pointless choice. And as I said, because it has I think you can give a name that will map the reverse relationship too. So it shouldn't matter. Let's peek at this a little more. I'm just paging through the documentation. I'm looking at the Django project topic but this is the examples for many-to-many. I probably should look at something a bit more specific on the actual API documentation, because that'll have all of the attributes that we care about. All right, so it's going to use a related manager, and the naming for the other direction should be related name. And let's check the foreign key. So it says related name is the name to use for the relation from the related object back to this one. So that was kind of a mouthful of words, but it essentially just means the getting the other direction. We can see it in this example below, where they have a tag, they have a foreign key, and so the tag in this remember, this is a foreign key. This is one-to-many. So tag has an article, but if you go to the article model and you want to get everything, all of the many that point to this, then it has a name. You can use the related name thing to give it how you want to access that thing, and it's they're using tags here, because I think the default, I'm sure it's documented somewhere here, which I'm not going to be able to find immediately, but the default is to take the model name and then add _set or something like that, if I recall correctly, and which is fine. You can use that sort of related name and take the default from the framework. But you don't always want to do that, because maybe you don't want to call it a set. Maybe you want to have just the plural form that exists across both. And set, I think, it's just kind of to dance around the fact that pluralization is hard, and Django can't automatically figure out what the plural form is. So using related name is a pretty common practice to make meaningful bidirectional connections. Okay, so let's get out of the database shell and let's go to the model. And I think what I want to do, since grade level kind of already exists on the course, I think what I want to do is pluralize it here, call it grade levels, and we'll change it to a many-to-many field. Many-to-many field. And now this is an interesting question of what happens do we still want it to cascade? I don't know if that still makes sense anymore. And I don't even know if that's going to be allowed for many-to-many. Okay, so cascading behavior. Some people are really not big fans of it, but I wanted a nice, clean way to clean up anything. So if you delete a grade level, the way that you should have read this on a foreign key is if the grade level is deleted for this course, there needs to be some behavior for handling what to do with the course itself. And your options are like make that an error with using the protect attribute. Set it to null so that the course would no longer have a grade level and kind of makes it an orphan. And the default behavior, or what used to be the default, and I think you now have to be explicit about it every time, is to have a cascade. So that if a grade level would be deleted for a foreign key relationship, all of its children would also be deleted, in this case, a course. But as we switch to a many relationship, I'm not so sure that that is what we want anymore. Because what happens if let's say, I was creating a school, I had 2 grades, and I deleted one grade, but they were sharing a course with the other one. Should the other grade level have its course suddenly deleted? That doesn't seem very sensible. But I don't even know if the onDelete even respects, or excuse me, if many-to-many field even respects onDelete behavior. It might not be a thing. This is where, again, my familiarity with this kind of runs out of steam. So let's look through these and see if onDelete is on here. We might need to like dig into the code to figure that out for clarity. Okay, and then here, I guess the Django docs are doing a good thing in telling us what I kind of just told you a minute ago, what's actually happening, of Django creating that, they're calling it an intermediary join table, that table that has both keys together. And they will auto-create a table for you. But what's actually interesting is, let's say you have, that you actually care about that relationship. So if there's a many-to-many, and you have 2 models, and you want to have like extra attributes about that particular kind of pairing, then you can use what's called a through model and use that as an additional attribute that you use with the through flag that will give you the opportunity to not only have the connection with the primary keys, but also let you include additional data on that intermediary table. That's useful sometimes. I don't think it's useful in the context that I'm trying to use today. So we're not going to use a through model. Hopefully hopefully that doesn't bite me in the long run. Oh, it looks like you can kind of add that if you want to anyway, with if you don't want to make it a whole other thing, you can add additional fields. That's interesting. Just looking through here. In none of these, see, look at this, like 1-to-1 field has onDelete as this parameter. But I did not see that on the constructor. I just saw it on options, listed on options. That's what makes me want to think that onDelete is not something that happens for many-to-many stuff. Okay, we're going to look at the code. So let's go into DB models, and if I were a many-to-many, where would I be? I'd probably be on a field, fields, and many, nope, not, all right, let's do a search. And we just want the Python. I wish I knew a way in GitHub search to exclude certain directories, because I don't care about the tests right now. These are all tests. It's encouraging, though, to see that Django is well tested. How many pages of this are there? Good grief. All right, let's jump to the end. I don't know if I have a clone of Django or not. Maybe I do. Because that's what we would care about. Doesn't look like I have a clone of it. I've got a bunch of junk in here, but no clone of Django. All right, well, I'll spend one more minute looking for it. If we can't find it, we'll move on. There's the many rel. So maybe that's close. All right. You know what? There are other ways to discover this. So let's go back to this area. We can dig this up. This is a good thing, a good skill to know how to do anyway. We can go to Django DB models, where all the fields are. So the field's going to be in some file. But when you import, so Django tries to provide a nice interface for accessing the fields, and so that you don't have to remember all these files. And they do that by using the init.py file and doing imports of stuff. So hopefully many to many shows up in here. Okay, that's what we needed to find. So there's a Django DB models fields related is the file that I should have gone to get to the thing that we care about. And here's the many-to-many field. Here's the init. As you can see, there is no on delete. Right? It's on the foreign key, but it's not on the many-to-many. Okay, cool. I think that's what I wanted to find out. So we can delete this. And so now we've got a many-to-many field. And that probably puts more onus on me as an author to figure out what should be the behavior when a grade level gets deleted. Is the course just going to get orphaned? I don't actually know. But I think this is what I want. Now there's going to be a plural, and the related name is courses, so we've created that relationship. And let's go to a test file. Shouldn't matter which one, because we're in the whole suite. And oh yeah, lots of errors. So this is where we start the process of cleaning up. I don't know how else to say this, that there's going to be changes that have to be made, and this is where having good test coverage is actually going to be helpful to guide where is this code actually using grade level, where grade level is not going to be the right thing anymore. I think the place that's going to have the biggest bang for the buck is to start with the factory for the course here. And if we come up to the factory file, you can see that there's a grade level attribute here that uses a subfactory. And I use that because that's the way you do factories, and foreign keys, they have a constraint on the database. So anytime you create a course, at least in the previous version, it expected a grade level to exist and be part of that. And so when you use the course factory, and you don't provide a grade level parameter, it will say, okay, you need to satisfy this constraint of having a grade level, so we're going to use this other factory to create the grade level and put it in here. What I'm not certain about is what kind of factory to use when it becomes a many-to-many. And I gotta believe that there's documentation in here about this, because this has got to be something that happens commonly. Okay. Building the adequate link between two models depends heavily on the use case. So we have subfactory or related factory. That might be the thing we want. Users will have to craft their own depending on the model. Fair enough. Well, so here's an example that shows a group with a many-to-many field on a user model. And the group is not creating anything because it doesn't have to. And the user, oh, interesting, it uses a post generation. That's for giving this behavior right here, where you want to have groups and you want to set some groups. Let's keep reading. And they're showing an example with the through model, as I mentioned a moment ago, which is interesting. And that's where you're defining the intermediate model yourself, the intermediate table. And you can see how it gets a little bit more complicated. So what they did was they have a group level factory, and then they use subfactories in that model to define the relationship. And they used related factory. Okay. And I think this is moving to a different topic. Okay, so let's go to the related factory. Related factory is mostly like a subfactory, with the main difference that the related factory will be generated after. So why would I use this? I don't remember. Well, what happens if we just change this to grade level? Just change it like that and do nothing else, and then still have a subfactory. Is that going to blow up, or will Factory Boy accept that? Okay. It doesn't like that. Direct assignment to the forward side of a many-to-many set is prohibited. Use gradelevels.set instead. So this is actually, so we instructed Factory Boy to create, I think what happened is we instructed it to create a grade level with the subfactory. That's what the subfactory is doing. It's going to create a grade level. But then we try to assign it directly to the many-to-many attribute of our new change in the course, and many-to-many fields don't like that. You can't do that. Although it said to use set. That was curious because I'm normally seeing it be like use add. So I don't know what that set attribute is. Let's go read more documentation. These are the attributes of it. That moves on to a different field. Sorry, I'm kind of scrolling fast. I apologize. I was hoping that there would be like a hit on the word set in the many-to-many area, but that's such a common word. It's unfortunate. Sigh. Okay. We dove, excuse me. I dove pretty deep into the API reference here. So there might be a better documentation path to get to this, because I went straight to the heart of the field type, and it may be better served by going from the top of the documentation down in. So there is this model layer area of the documentation, and it's got fields, a fields reference. And now if I search for many-to-many, that's going to take me back to, we were just here, weren't we? Shoot. Yep, model field reference. Crap, wrong. It's not helpful. We want like a topic guide that helps with this subject. I doubt it's going to be an introduction to models. They've talked about the verbose name, but that's not what we want. Okay, maybe there is a section on this here. Now, there's that example docs that we saw a moment ago. Okay, here we go. You can use add, create, or set to create relationships as long as you specify through defaults. I don't even know that through defaults really applies for the thing that we care about. So if you may not even have defaults to set. Like there's nothing on this. We're going to be adding a through model that is literally just the two primary keys. So through defaults is like when you need to set additional information. And I don't know why there are three separate methods. That's interesting. I don't know what the distinction is between those three. I have used add in the past. Like I've done that for testing because Django itself does have like the contrib auth package with the user and the groups tables. I think that itself is a many-to-many relationship. So there are times where you want to write a test that checks for a certain group because maybe you've written views that have protected group access or something like that. And you would say user.groups.add group in your test. And it would do the right thing and add that entry. What's unclear to me is like, what do we need to do in Factory Boy? Sorry, I'm blanking out on what I was trying to say. And that's what I'm not quite connecting all the dots with. Let's come back to this common recipes thing. See what we can see. because this path right here of doing this group level factory in this example, if they use that as the through model, I could make a factory, add a through model to this relationship that I'm about to add, this course grade level. First of all, I don't really think there's a good name for it, which is kind of an indicator to me that it doesn't feel like a relationship that needs to be explicitly called out and exist. But if I did that, then anytime I needed a course and a grade level and a test, I could instead use the through, and it would kind of create both sides with a subfactory. But that just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. More likely, I probably need to use that post generation thing that we saw and do that, like what's here with but I don't know which side I want to do this on. Again, it gets back to that many to many gets kind of weird. It's like there's no longer this obvious hierarchy of grade level is the thing above courses. It's now, well, I could point to this or I could point to this, and so one thing is not more important than the other anymore. And you can see where in this post generation they're passing in more groups, but I still don't know that will create. I always want one of these things to be created by default, basically, is what I'm looking for in the tests. And I'm not sure how to accomplish that based on what is listed here. So I could have a post-generation hook that could live on grade level that could create a course using a different factory. I don't know that I like that though, because then you have to create the grade level in order to get a course. Is that true? And I'm then thinking through this of if I then did the same thing on a course, what's to stop? It seems like I could very easily get into a cycle of creating stuff that is extra, and that seems dangerous. So, feeling a little stuck at the moment. Because this is the kind of this decision is a decision that will likely stick with me for a long time. And I know this is the right modeling change, but like the ability to test this and do it well is important. And that's what's not very clear. All right, we got to try something though. Can't just not do anything. I don't think that's going to be fruitful. So let's try a strategy where we take this off. So what is this saying now? Now remember, because this is an extra table, there's no constraints anymore that says that a course has to be connected to a grade level. That constraint kind of goes out the window because it's on another table, and there's no way for the database to directly enforce that, to my knowledge. So if we could just leave it off, then we should be able to create a course record without any problem. In fact, let's test that theory out. Let's go to the courses test models area, and I've got a factory test that just tests that the course comes out the other side. So I've commented out grade levels here. So this I hope, yeah, cool. It should be okay. And then if this stuff is uncommented, it should fail because it's going to give that same error that I saw earlier. So this is fine. So it might really come down to the behavior of what do I anticipate testing more often? Am I going to have to create a grade level most of the time and then pass it into a course? Or am I going to just want a course that has some grade level connected? If it is the latter scenario, and I'm going to use the course factory more, then I will probably want a post generation step on the course factory that will go in and add a grade level to the object. So I think self is a bit of a lie here. This is one of the confusing aspects of this documentation. So it appears, when you look at this thing, it looks like factory post generation is a method on the factory, but that's not really what it is. It's in reality, and you can see it here. So the thing that's being called self in this function is really an object instance of a user in this example, which is why they can call self.groups.add and add a group to the particular user that's being generated. I think it's a weird thing, and I want to even say that where they talk about post generation, they don't use the example like this. So I don't think this example is all that clear. Let's look for the post generation stuff, and we can see if it talks about this differently. Yeah, here's a better example where now they're talking about it as if here's the thing that's getting created for you out of the factory. They're calling it OBJ, but now it's referring to the actual record that was created rather than being a method on the user factory itself. Maybe that distinction maybe you don't care about that, but it is something that I was thinking about as I look at these examples. So I think, and the other thing to note is the method name, it doesn't matter. This is just something that post generation will run after this particular factory generates something, right? I don't know if post generation can be added to like multiple functions or multiple methods that are in the factory. I'm not really clear on that. But I think it's also important to note that you don't like have to name it a particular way and either. So it's not something I think I have to name grade levels or something. But I think that the reason that they do that, now it's coming back to me. The reason that they do that is if you want to do stuff like this. So if you want to pass in, I think it becomes extracted. That's what they're trying to say. So in this final example where they pass in mbox and they've got this post generation, the temp alt here is what the value of extracted is. So they're offering up a default or a default value here or the extracted value. So we probably do want to actually name the thing grade levels, because if I'm going to write a test, there we go. So I can write another test over here in just a moment that will basically check of if I create multiple grade levels, can I add them to the course factory and they'll be like connected appropriately. So let's say factory post generation, and we'll call it grade levels because we're going to pass in want to be able to pass in multiple grade levels as a list. And I told you I don't I don't think it makes sense to call it self, so I'm actually going to call it object and say that this is more of a function hook. It's almost like this is a static method in disguise on this class, really. It's an oddity of Factory Boy. So there are different attributes that are there. There's created, extracted, and what was then just keyword args. So, or not created, create. So I think what I want to have happen is, if this is a create, I want to do something. And that's what I'm not clear on how to do. Like, how can I say, I guess I could import the grade level factory and say grade level. So I'll just type it out, what I'm thinking. Grade level, like this. And then say object. Let's not even call it object, that's stupid. I'll call it course, because that's what the thing is. We can call course grade levels add grade level. That's kind of what I'm going for. So there's a bit more wiring that we're having to do ourselves here. And the downside of this approach is that now I have this factory that's like crossing applications, which means up here I would need to import from the other app, which maybe that's just what we have to do. So let's try it and see if it works. So homeschool, schools, tests, factories, import, grade level. And that's not what we want. That's not what we want, because that's the model. We want factory. Factory. So, is this factory test going to pass now? It did. So let's check on it. Let's check that the count of the grade levels for this course is 1. So assert equal course grade levels. I don't know if I can, I'm going to try calling count directly. I don't know if that'll work. We might have to call all on it. I'm going to attempt this first. We want that to be 1. Cool. And just to confirm, since I didn't have the test first, let's comment this out and try it now. And it fails because it's not actually creating that grade level. So we've managed to reestablish the direction when there is a grade level, or when this thing is created for the first time, it's now going to create a grade level. There's a downside to this approach, I think, in that I'm not, it's just like a default grade level. It's not connected to anything. So it's going to pull in whatever, which is why I'm not crazy about this. And what do I mean by that? So if you recall, I said earlier that the way factories work is that they'll use subfactories if they're not provided stuff. And so this thing will get a grade level, and if it's not given a school year, then it's going to create a school year. And if you need a school year, it's going to create a school. And then if it's going to create a school, it's going to need an administrator. So it has to create these levels up higher and higher. And so if I make a course by default here, and I don't have any control in the test, to control this particular grade level object, I don't actually know if that's useful. Because yeah, there's just no control over it. So this grade level is going to be for some random user. So I think the more I think on this, like maybe I just don't want to do that. Maybe it is a behavior that I'm going to have to force, like opt into and wire my stuff together a little bit more carefully in order to construct this. So I am going to say that if we're creating, well, do I want to do anything with create at all? Do I care about the create attribute? The create attribute is like whether you're using build or create, and build is when you're, yes, okay, I do care. If I don't take some action here on create, then if I try and do something like this, where extracted is now a list of, if I assume that it's a list of grade levels, and I try and do course dot grade, can I set all those at the same time? Course grade level, maybe that's what set was for. Set extracted. Is that what the set method was for? Yeah. So the set can take a list of all of them. So if I set all of these extracted and do that, that's fine as long as there's an actual course record. But if this was a build and the course record has not been persisted to the database, then I have a feeling that this stuff would blow up. So I have to return if it's not a creation. So now that I've done that, I get grade level out of there. And the fact this is going to not do anything anymore. Whoops. Sorry. So there's more checking we need to do. The extracted, I didn't provide any grade levels here, so I didn't give it a list. I didn't do this with, some kind of grade level object. So what what extracted got was actually none. So I really only want to add grade levels if it is a list here. And maybe even more accurately, like it doesn't need to be a list specifically. It just needs to be some kind of iterable. And like that, the simplest check is if extracted. And, frankly, if I'm the author of these tests, if I'm writing a test where I take grade levels and I pass in a string, that's my own darn fault for doing something so stupid. Because what's going to happen here, well, we'll just run it and see. Yeah, it doesn't know what that is. It's a string. And that's nonsense for this many-to-many relationship. So what I'm going to do in these kind of tests is passing grade levels that is an iterable that has some kind of value in it of grade level like that, which will come from a grade level factory. And then at this point, the setting will do the right thing. It'll create the additional records in the through table and create the actual connection. Okay, that was a lot of stuff just to get factories to a reasonable state. I can make this change and I can run the whole test suite again, but we're still going to get a ton of failures because most of them are not going to know what's going on because a lot of them are still using the foreign key and so on. And this is not even true anymore. We don't need that. So this should pass now at least. Whoops. I didn't save. So that should pass. So we've got that passing. And we might have to take this file by file. See what happens. See what's failing. So test has grade level. So here's a perfect example. There is no grade level anymore. And so we want to say that we're going to change this to be a list of grade levels is what's really needed now. And it's still going to complain because on the assertion, I'm now asserting that there's a foreign key, but that's not how it works. So what's really needed is to ask for all the grade levels out of the related manager, and we need to do to convert it to a list. Otherwise it's going to be, well, I'll show you what it looks like if we don't do that. So if I just say this is going to be a query set comparing to a list. So this should probably fail. And it's showing that. So a query set does behave like an iterable, which is why the way this is appearing is it kind of does have this list-like behavior where it's using square brackets to show it, but then it is wrapping that in query set. And it's hinting to you that this is a query set. It's actually a feature that was not always in Django. It used to be super confusing because older versions of Django, the repr syntax, which is what this is, it's a repr, which stands for representation. So it's like you implement it by using a double underscore repr, REPR, double underscore method. But what the repr used to be for query set was just this stuff right here. And if you notice, like I'm noticing, this part and this part look like identical. So you get these super weird assertions where it would say, list, or what looked like a list does not equal what looks like a list of the exact same thing. And you'd just be left scratching your head like, there's no way that's true. But it turned out that when you got down to it, it was the fact that the type of this was actually a query set. So in order to solve that, you have to perform an evaluation on the query set and convert it to a list. And so now this thing passes. So now we've got an example of how grade levels have to be added with course factories. I think this is going to be annoying, frankly. I'm going to want to find better ways to do this, but this is the way I can think of right now. There might be, Factory Boy has a system called traits too that might be able to make this better, but I will deal with that later. Okay, so we do have another one. We have test order with respect to course. Let's go to that next test. And I think that's basically just going to be the process of like, if I run the whole suite, we have 45 test failures to address. That's just the reality. This particular change, like this model and this course and this grade level, is like at the heart of the application. And frankly, like I haven't deployed this app in a long time because I've got all these model changes. This might be the kind of change where I go back and rather than deal with a bunch of weird migrations, I just kind of wipe out migrations that I haven't applied to my deployment yet and kind of restart, because switching to many fields is one of those painful things you just rarely want to have to do. So it's kind of one of these things I wish I had known to do this up front, but what can you do? So we're going to come down here, test order with respect to course. And this is the one that was broken. So we need to, this might be really tricky. Because I brought in a third-party package to do this, to do some ordering stuff. And I don't know that third-party package is ready to handle this. Super. Well, we'll see. So the first thing we needed to do is create a grade level using a grade level factory. Okay. And now we have to pass in grade levels, a list of grade level. And we want to change, whoops, that's not the right syntax. And it needs to be, frankly, it needs to be the same. So let's delete all this content and yank all this content and pass them. Because what the previous version of this was doing, it was creating a course, and the first version of the course had to create a grade level. So it's saying that these two courses share a grade level. And so now moving a task will only affect tasks within an individual course. Ah, okay. That's what we're checking. All right, so now this should behave appropriately, I think. Cool. So it's sort of just like rewiring the data together to populate this new table that didn't exist previously. And I think that's that whole file. Okay, so now we can move up to, well, let's look at the next area. What should we check on next? Students, we can go to the students area. And we'll just keep iterating until everything's working. So this is the whole file. There's a bunch of failures in here. Received deep context for unknown fields. So test has tasks with completed. Has tasks. Okay. So what's happening? We have I'm trying to take advantage of how to build this stuff again, and all of these are going to be broken now because I'm using the old style syntax where I had a foreign key and I connected it with a school year and a school. So what's going to have to change at this point is I'm going to need to create a grade level and then plug it into the course factory. That's how it's going to have to work. So we'll do grade level of grade level factory, and we want school year school user.school. So looks like I need to import grade level factory. So hopefully this will start to make sense. Like what this course factory is doing is it was relying on going through subfactories and creating each of these necessary pieces that was missing. There was already a school created by the user record, and so the student and we wanted the student to be connected to the school, and we want this course to be connected to the school as well. And in order to do that, we have to pass the school up through all these attributes. But since grade level is no longer a foreign key, now what we're essentially going to do is replace this with grade levels equal to grade level, and that'll do it. But we have to bring in the factory that we need to use as well, and that's in the schools factory area. So the grade level factory from here. Okay, then come back to this test. Oops, I went too far. Test has task. Uh-oh. So now we're starting to probably run into like the real code failures, not just test failures. And it's true. Here's the line that fails. In line 42 on get course, it's trying to do a lookup from grade level, and it can't do that. So we'll have to do this query a little differently. So it's not only test data that's going to change. I knew that it was going to impact the production code, but at least the test data here is here to show me, hey, wait a minute, you need to go fix this production code. And I already forgot where that code was. Students' views, okay. So what we need is down here. We need to get a course. Now this is going to be interesting because we're getting how we have to fetch this is different now. So previously this said, give me all the courses and do all the joins to find the right user to make sure you have the right protection. Now instead, we're going to want to get the grade level, any of the grade levels that are associated with this user, and pass that in to the filtering. I think that's how it will work. That's an interesting one because I actually, in some way, I don't know if the many-to-many is going to change even how the filtering operation works in Django here. So I think what I'm going to try and do, well, what's the right course of action here? Because what this is really asking is, like, give me all of the courses for this user. That's what it's saying. And it has to be, it's not only that, but give me all the courses for this user where the UUID matches this. So it is a course filter, ultimately. But it's this middle part right here that is the wrong part. So we do need to do a get object or 404. But it's on something, well, it's probably in two places now. And it's not just a singular object. So we basically want to have grade levels. Well, I'll type out what I think it's supposed to be, roughly. So we want to do a filter to get all the grade levels where school year, school admin is equal to the user that's being passed in. And again, we're going to have to start importing grade level in a lot more places now. Okay. So that's a filter, and what I don't know is that if this next part's going to work, where can I now use in the filter, can I use the many-to-many relationship and say grade levels is equal to grade levels? If I could type. And even the select related doesn't make sense anymore either. Oops. This is more like what we want to do now. So you can see how it's actually, well, I guess the query is not evaluating here until it gets to here. So maybe it might be effectively about the same number of queries, but I don't even know if the syntax is going to work. Oh, that's a fun one. The query set value for an exact lookup. It's not an exact lookup anymore. So we want to say grade levels in. Cool. All right. So what was that? What did I just do? When you do this, it's saying you need to be a singular thing. But this query set behaves like an iterator, right? Or it behaves like something that is iterable. So it's like a list. And in order for Django to figure that out, you need to say, is it in this list? So it figures out that this is a many-to-many, and we're doing a comparison on a query set that has the list of grade levels to do the comparison, and it gets the right thing from there. So cool. That's one test down. And now some of these other ones are probably not about fixing up the view, but about fixing up the same kind of test failure that we had from before, where we're going to need this repeatedly. So come down to this next one, and you can see it here. Like it's not grade level anymore. It needs to be grade levels equal grade level. Yeah. Test has student. And this is why this change is kind of annoying, because like all of my tests are now going to have to grow. Every time I want to use a course, I now have to make a grade level separately, and kind of not going to have this as few of a steps. And it's not super easy to make this change quickly either. Grade levels equal grade level. Nope. Okay. Test is passing. And let's find the next one. Test has course. So really what I want to do is replace most of these single line courses with the double line. Okay, and then test get. Cool. So there's a rhythm that you can get into, but this is just kind of grunt work. You just got to do it. Test not graded. Yeah, like check this thing out. Course task, course, grade level, school year. There's a big chain to get all the way down there. And so it's not going to be as easy anymore, because, well, now what do I have to do for this one? In order to connect this properly, I do need to have all of these intermediate, because each one of these things separated by double underscores is actually a different record. So that's a course task, that's a model, course is a model, grade level is a model, school year is the school year that's here. So I need to be able to create the course, but I'm going to have to do something like this, where I create the grade level, set the grade level there, the school year. Do I need a school year in multiple places? No. Okay. At least I don't need the school year in multiple places. So I can get rid of the school year line, and I can come to the course line here and change this to course now. Whoops. Cannot query school year object. Where did I mess that up? Course, task, course, course. School year, school. What line did it fail on? Oh, this is failing in the production code again. Get graded work. Over here and go to 110. Yeah. So it's doing a filter on the school year, which is fine. So now we need to get the grade levels, which is where it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Grade levels is grade level objects filter, and the school year is equal to the school year. And now we need to do the connection to get the courses. Or is that right? Yeah. So we need the courses that apply to this grade level. Good grief. And we need to say grade levels in grade levels from just above. And now we can come to this and say course in courses. I think that's right. Okay. Test grade. We'll do a couple more of these, and then I'll try and do the rest of these offline, because man, talk about brutal. But I hope you're getting the idea of what has to happen to get all this going. It's a non-trivial amount of stuff, sadly. So we're going to take the course and grade level from up here and going to get rid of the school year object and say change this to course, and the same thing right here. And we're now down back in here again, back in the actual production code, another line where we have to fix it up. So it's probably going to be similar to this code that we just used up here. I'll copy that for now. Come down, find where it is. So we needed a student to filter on, and it looks like the school is coming from that. So we've got grade levels. We're going to say to translate, to get to what I'm trying to do is get to this graded work filter that's breaking right here, which is getting deep into course, task, course, grade level. And so we need to change school year to be school. And because the school is what's locally available in this method. And so that gives us grade levels now. That's the right filter. And we can get the courses from the grade levels in the many-to-many relationship. And then we can come down to course, and we can say in courses. Okay. All right, one more test in this file that's failing. And let's see if it's just in the test or if it's actually in the code. It looks like, based on this traceback, that it's just in the test. And the test is test fetch graded work. Fetch graded work. Yep, that's again trying to access grade level. So we'll change it to get rid of school year, which is going to cause both of these two spots to blow up, is what I expect. And we'll come over to this line and say equal course and do the same there. All right, cool. So let's stop there. That's enough staring at tracebacks and tests and stuff. What's going on here? Oh, apparently let's do one last thing to clean this up. We're no longer doing a school year factory import because we're getting it from the grade level. So that's cool, little side effect. So what's happening? We have changed the type of this relationship to a many-to-many. And you can see how it cascades over the entire application because this app, this particular model is used. It's right in the heart of everything in this app. Like if I bring up the models diagram again, although it's drawn a little off to the side, this thing, because of the way this tree is structured, is if you break any link in this chain, you're gonna feel it, because the structure of the tree is school year, grade level, course task, and so on. And because of how this stuff has to be displayed, like the user is connected to the school, but most often the user, the teacher, wants to see the tasks that are affected to their students. So because of the many-to-many relationship, the connection got more complicated. And now there are more links in the chain, and we can't do a direct lookup all the way to the final thing. We have to then do this kind of intermediate lookup stuff. Maybe there are ways to like clean this up so that some of these lookups can be wrapped up and done in nicer ways, and I'll probably explore that in the code, because frankly, like, I see this line of code and knowing that I'm having to plumb all of this through myself is kind of ridiculous as I look at it, and it's a ton of code in here. But what I'm doing at first is I'm trying to follow what TDD advocates will call the red-green refactor of this. I made a change, and the change was massive in its implications on the data model. And because my test suite has really good coverage across the board, it sort of lit up the suite with red. And so, I think we saw, like, out of the couple hundred tests that are there, 70 of them or so started failing. So my plan is to basically keep working through this change until I get all of the tests back to green. But that's not where I want to stop. If I stop there, then what I'm going to be left with is some perhaps gnarly looking code. And what I'm hoping is that out of this experience of changing and improving these tests and actually making these connections work with the many-to-many relationships, I'll start to be able to see patterns out of this, patterns that I can extract and say, like, you know what, this is going to come up a lot. I see how I'm using it consistently here, 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 and here. Okay, time to pull that together into some kind of model method or some kind of access that I can make, and not have to do this more complicated stuff. And particularly what's going to be really obvious is this pattern of going from getting anything that's low in that tree from the connection that's high in the tree, like to make sure that that stuff has the right permissions and all that sort of thing. That's going to be where I think the helpers are going to be. So, at the end of this, how many failures do I have left? I have 36 failures to go, and I'll probably work those offline so that next time I can kind of cover like, well, what else did I have to change to do this? Because what I want to do is get this out of the way, get the ability to have that data represented in the model, so that we can start adding the forms. Because practically, this is going to mean some real user interface changes to the system too. Because now, when a course gets created, the option needs to be present of, well, what grade do you want to associate this with, and how do we, how does that happen? So those are all things that need to be considered. So I think that's where I want to end for the evening. Hopefully you took a little bit away from this. I know it's been a quiet chat tonight, but we're pretty deep into a tricky subject, and one that I'm not the most polished on, as you probably observed. But I hope that you learned a little something with me as we went through this, and I appreciate you hanging around. So with that, I'll bid you good night. There will be the video will be posted up on YouTube as soon as it gets finished with its processing. So if there's anything you want to check out, you're free to do so. And as a reminder, all of this code is up on GitHub. I don't know that I will get this particular change published quickly, but you can check it out then. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Ezra Flow, for being here. I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a good night. Take care.